Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. On the 24th of July, we saw the first Jummah Salah at the Hagia Sophia Masjid after 86 years. The Hagia Sophia Masjid was changed into a museum in 1934 by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. And a few weeks ago, Turkey's highest court passed a ruling that Hagia Sophia can now be turned back into a masjid. As expected, there were many people, many countries that were unhappy and angry with Turkey's decision. However, what I found most surprising, to be honest with you, is that even though the majority of Muslims were happy, proud of this moment, there are some Muslims out there who feel that this is not the right decision that the Turkish authorities have made. Now, the Muslims I'm talking about here, they come from various angles, okay, on why they think this is an incorrect decision. However, some people even trace this decision back to the actual initial conversion of Hagia Sophia from a cathedral to a masjid by Sultan Muhammad Fatih. So some people say that this actual initial conversion was in itself illegal. Now, I know that Brother Mudassar was one of those people who found that the conversion of Muhammad Fatih was problematic. However, he's since changed his opinion. So, inshallah ta'ala, I want to tap into the knowledge that Brother Mudassar has acquired over the last couple of weeks. So, bro, just to kick it off, why did you carry the opinion previously that the initial conversion by Muhammad Fatih was problematic?
The initial opinion was built upon a verse of the Quran, which translation of the meaning, it's Surah Al-Hajj, verse 40. It says, were Allah not to check people by means of others, there would have been demolished the monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques in which the name of Allah is often mentioned. So initially for me, it was less about the political significance of what was happening and what was going on in Turkey and the sort of vibes it was generating amongst the people there and the atmosphere on the ground there. It was more about, from a Shariah sort of legal perspective, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has basically described struggling in his path as the means of the protection of people and their properties and their places of worship, then how could we justify Sultan Muhammad Fatih taking a place of worship of another group of people and then converting it to a masjid? So my thinking was based around that sort of premise.
Okay, but you mentioned in the ayah that talks about the destruction of churches, monasteries, etc., right? Isn't the issue of destroying a building different to converting a building?
You're absolutely right. But if we look into the matter further, for example, if we have a look at the various tafasir of this particular verse, whether it's Hassan al-Basri, whether it's Imam Tabari, whether it's Imam al-Qurtubi, the theme or the understanding that they take from this is the principle or the rule extracted from the verse is linked to protection.
Right.
Does that make sense to you? So, I mean, I'm going to post a blog in regards to this, maybe today or tomorrow or something. So we'll have more of the sayings of the imams and the references in terms of this verse. But the theme was protection.
Okay, so just to
place of worship of the non-Muslims. So due to that, technically, if you're going somewhere and you're not, ripping it down, you're converting it to a masjid. You haven't destroyed it. But the problem is was it not a public property of the Christians or the Jews? And have you not converted their property into something else and thus violating this aspect of protection that was in fact offered by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the non-Muslim citizens of the state?
Okay, so what's changed your opinion then?
The key thing that's got me to reconsider that there was two aspects. when I looked into this verse further, wherever I would look to, there was a mention of dhimmis, 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 everywhere. I didn't find one tafsir from the tafsir that I went through of this verse that did not mention dhimmis. So the thought crossed my mind, this is only mentioning dhimmis. If you're in the middle of a battle with someone and you're confiscating something from them, they're not Ahlul Dhimma at that time. You've not even applied Islam on them,
Okay,
because
so
it's Dar al-Hud.
what is, just to for our listeners, what is a dhim? Who is a dhimmi?
A dhimmi is basically a person who has like a covenant or a treaty. He's a non-Muslim citizen that lives in the Islamic State that's basically covenanted. There's a treaty between the dhimmi and the state, and this treaty ensures protection of life, wealth, property, honor. So even, for example, dhimmis living in the Islamic State in the past, if their churches were attacked by someone or their synagogues, the Muslim soldiers took it upon themselves to protect them. And this was like the sunnah of Rasulullah, then the companions, the rightly guided khulafa that came after him, and then others as well later on. So this is basically that you call them the people of the covenant, the dhimma, so the Ahlul Dhimma or dhimmis. So the key point is each time I was reading a commentary, the common theme was dhimmis. The second thing that got me to reconsider was the concept of ghanima and looking at the definition of ghanima.
But just before you go to ghanima, the issue of dhimmis, why in the scenario of the conquest of Constantinople, is the issue of dhimmi, why is that controversial?
I don't think it's controversial, but I think it's something that can potentially cause some level of confusion. Because there are other brothers who, from an Islamic perspective, want to disagree with the validity of the actions of Sultan Muhammad Fatih. And previously, I held a similar position based upon a verse of the Quran. So I think understanding the reality of dhimmis is very important in clarifying this topic. The reason the controversy arises is people, they won't look at who the Ahlul Dhimma are, and they will apply these verses in a very general and unrestricted way. Okay? Now, if you're doing that, then anything can become problematic. Really. Because what you're saying is these particular verses are applying to every single reality. If that was the case, you wouldn't even be able to go to war with people, even if it was for the interests of your state, even if they were potentially aggressing against you. So we have to understand the correct context of the verses and where they're supposed to be applied and how they're supposed to be applied. And if there's any other narrations in regards to the topic that may specify or restrict the verse, to have a more well-rounded sort of viewpoint in regards to what the verse is actually commanding. One of the things, Maj, that I would like to add is one of the things that's really, really angered me and infuriated me is bandwagonists from both sides, where people will just take an opinion from someone that they trust, or maybe a scholar, maybe not a scholar, whether it's someone who comes out with quite odd opinions like Imran ibn Hussain, or maybe someone else. And this is both sides of the coin. People who are propagating both opinions, and they're propagating an opinion. In fact, they're saying that there's no difference of opinion. You have to take my opinion on board, but there's no text being provided. There's absolutely no effort that's been made. There's no sort of discussion of what the Mujtahid Imams said in regards to the topic. There's no discussion of treaties, of spoils of war. And I think this sort of mentality, or this sort of football team allegiance almost, this is wrong. We have an intellectual tradition. and we're really we're disrespecting the scholars of old that have written volumes and volumes of text on this. If we're just falling into bandwagonism because my imam or a person that I trust, or he said something, so I'm going to take this on board now, and there can't be a difference of opinion. I mean, come on,
Okay,
for me to say there's no difference of opinion on a topic, I need to have gone through all of the works in regards to that topic, and that's unlikely. I don't speak Arabic fluently, so for me to get through everything like that, so one of the things that this event has highlighted to me is people are very easy to jump on a bandwagon, and I disagree with that, whether that's someone that's for or against the actions of Sultan Muhammad Fatih.
Okay, let's inshallah. I want to get onto that dhimmi issue, because the thing is for the people watching at home, right? You mentioned the issue of the person who are dhimmis. They have a covenant with the state so that their lives, their place of worship are protected, right? Okay. Now you mentioned that when you were checking the tafsir of the ayat you mentioned, Surah Hajj verse 40, it all referred to dhimmi. Okay, so why is it that we cannot apply the issue of dhimmi on the people of Constantinople, or what happened in that conquest?
Because they were taken by force.
Okay, do you want to explain that then? You want to explain that?
The scholars of Islam, I have to bring in Ghanima because the two are linked.
That's fine, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to make that clear, the fact that why is it that those verses you're saying, yes, they have an application, but not on every situation, not on every scenario. So why is this scenario different? That's what I want to make clear.
I have to introduce Ghanima.
Yeah,
otherwise I won't be able to give an answer.
Yeah, go for it.
Ghanima, by definition, is that property which is acquired through material struggle. So if you're physically in a war, and the person that you're fighting, he's basically he's been killed, that his property is your property, basically, according to the
spoils of war. Yeah,
the books of fiqh, spoils of war. But spoils of war, they said, is stuff it's a property that you acquired when you've physically been taking part in material action. Okay, so the reason I mentioned that is dhimma isn't something that the dhimmis or the non-Muslims in a land automatically become entitled to when an army goes there.
Right.
This is something that's agreed post-conquest, okay? Or it's something that can be agreed pre-battle. If they make some sort of a treaty, or if there was a siege and they surrendered, it could be part of the terms of surrender.
Offer terms and stuff.
It's offer, yeah, basically, So you can't say that just because Muhammad Fatih has gone into a land and the Uthmanis have gone into a land, that automatically these people have become dhimmis. You've not even started implementing Islam. The conquest fully has not been consolidated and completed. You've not taken over the whole city.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did more reading on this, I found that the Hagia Sophia, in fact, it falls under the Ghanima and the spoils for the conquerors. Not only that, when they went in, as soon as they went in, it wasn't like a magic switch. The people were taken by force, okay? They did not accept terms.
Okay, yeah.
They did not accept jizya. So the fact that they've been taken by force, their property has become yours through spoils. So now, if the property has become the property of Sultan Muhammad Fatih, it's not really a public property of the Christians anymore.
So when you say property, do you mean the buildings, the people even? Or just combatants?
You have to look at every single scenario separately, but there are a hadith from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nadir, where some of the judgments that were given there, everything, and this wasn't even fighting. This was because they were sieged and they surrendered unconditionally.
Okay.
So everything that was there, because they'd obviously tried to assassinate the Prophet, everything that was there was taken, and even the families of the combatants were taken as spoils of war. So in that particular case, that's what happened. I'm not entirely sure what happened with all of the people within Istanbul, because the scholars, when they discussed this, they said the Imam, some of them were of the opinion that the Imam has to study the matter, and whatever's best for Islam and for the image of Islam, and for the dawah of Islam, he will take that action. But
Well,
it is a scenario that can occur, as we've seen in Banu.
it's
With the
interesting.
people of Banu
It's
Nadir.
interesting you say that, because we see that when Istanbul, Constantinople was conquered, that in fact the historians say that Muhammad Fatih, he actually gave a lot of concessions to the Orthodox Christians, because maybe he understood that this is a predominantly Christian land. Okay, they're not Muslims,
Yeah.
so so why alienate them? So he gave them a lot of concessions.
There's in an area on the outskirts of Constantinople which actually surrendered without a fight. The name escapes me. Okay, when I put my blog out, I'll pop it in there, inshallah. But this particular area, it had one of the largest number of sort of dilapidated churches within Turkey. What does this say about Muhammad Fatih?
What happened?
He wasn't just going in there. The image that's painted of him, unfortunately, even by some Muslims, is he was just going in there. He was a young man. He was, kind of, there was like a savage takeover, and a lot of people were killed. Well, in war, people are killed anyway, okay? But some of the sort of secularists, this is the picture they paint of him, which I've always disagreed with. That's not the case. But the fact of the matter is there are the areas that surrendered close by to Istanbul. Why did he not convert and touch their churches? Because he understood the Sunnah. He understood the practice of the rightly guided Khulafa. If there's a treaty, don't go near the places of worship.
In fact, to be honest with you, there's cathedrals within the conquered area that weren't changed.
That he could have.
That you could have,
because
yeah.
technically it became his property.
So the issue you're saying about the property, that it becomes the property because the armies surround the area. They give terms, as you would do, accept Islam. If not, then you don't need to accept Islam, but you need to come under our rule and pay the jizya. If not, then it's war. Okay, so we know that I think it is sort of amongst the scholars, it's very well known that if you take it by force, then there's a ghanima, then it's your property, etc. Is this issue, is there a dispute, a difference of opinion in the scholars on how conquered land should be treated?
There's several opinions, and one of the things that I found amusing was a lot of brothers online were saying there's a Hanafi opinion, there's a Hanafi opinion, there's a Hanafi opinion. Well, there is a Hanafi opinion, but in my opinion, the Hanafi opinion is more lenient than the Shafi'i opinion.
Okay.
Because Imam, if we read, for example, Bidayat al-Mujtahid of Shaykh ibn Rushd, he discusses the various opinions in regards to several topics. A good friend of mine, Otto Usman, has been reading it, so he basically passed some of the parts over to me. Very, very good. It runs through moon sighting and a lot of different topics. But anyway, without sidetracking, if we go through that, he mentions that Imam al-Malik was actually of the position that when you go into a land and you overtake a land, then it's better for he was of the opinion that unless the maslaha says so, leave the land in the possession of the non-Muslims. Leave it in the possession. Okay, the neck of the land belongs to the state. It's become state property, but leave the land in the possession of the non-Muslims, and whatever benefits that come forth from that, you can just collect a tax on that, called the haraj. Imam al-Shafi'i differed. He said, no. He said that land becomes ghanima. And you basically distribute that as you would distribute ghanima. i.e. 1/5 going to Allah and His Messenger, the orphan, the needy, the wayfarer, and so on and so forth, and then the rest going to the soldiers. It was actually Abu Hanifa who had the middle position. He said that land, whether you want to take it as spoils and distribute it the way Islam has commanded, or whether you want to leave it with the disbelievers in terms of in their possession, whereas you own the neck, and tax them on, you know, whatever sort of produce or services that come forth from whatever they're going to do on that land, then that's the choice of the Imam. He said it's the ijtihad of the Imam. And this is another thing that some people can use to differ on this, because when it's referring to the Imam, it's not referring to the Imam of the masjid, it's referring to the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And as we know, when Muhammad Fatih went in there, he was not the Amir al-Mu'mineen.
No, he wasn't.
The Amir al-Mu'mineen was Abbasi. I mean, I differ with that because from the reading that I've done, I adopt the position that it was his ghanima. So he fought, he went in, it was his ghanima, the ghanima of his soldiers. But if someone potentially carries the other position, where it's the adoption of the Imam, they can say, well, wait a minute, this isn't talking about the Amir of the war, you know, the Imam of war. It's talking about the Amir al-Mu'mineen. So was it even his right to do with the land as he pleased there, or was it something that should have been deferred to the Khalifa? So, you know, the topic is not, I wouldn't say it's black and white, but there's overwhelming evidence to say that what he did there was a strong opinion. It was a Sharia opinion. For anyone, the problem is you've got one group of people saying you can't differ with Muhammad Fatih. You know, you just can't. And as I've mentioned, if you actually have a look at some of the classical scholarly opinions, there were differences of opinion. We can't deny that. So, you know, to say that you can't differ with Muhammad Fatih, I think is unfair. But at the same time, the other people who adopt the other position, sometimes they can almost paint Muhammad al-Fatih as some sort of a
bandit.
He didn't care about religion, some sort of a astaghfirullah, some sort of a like a madman, you know. And you know, they won't accept anything from the other side. And then it's like, well, what about Banu Nadir? What about Banu Kainuka? You know, what about Masjid al-Dirar? You know, which according to the tafasir was torn down. Yeah. So you can't take one text, already adopt a position, and then work backwards to basically say that's the text that backs me up. It doesn't work out like that.
Okay.
The Sharia text come first.
Okay,
and
bro.
Unfortunately, some of the discussions that I've engaged in myself with various people who, you know, propagate both positions, it's almost like making your mind up and then working backwards to defend a position. And that should not be a method of adoption. The method of adoption should be going to the text, going to the scholars, reading what their positions were, and then trying to understand from that sort of basis.
Okay, subhanAllah. As you know, yeah, I wanted to make this a short video, so there's so much that we can include, but I know you're going to be publishing a blog very soon. So, you know, for all the listeners, the viewers, you know, that blog will have all the references. And inshallah ta'ala, when I post this on Facebook, for example, you know, it's open for people to comment and question, or even, you know, even disagree. So one last question I want to end on, and I want a quick answer on this one, if it's even possible, is that, okay, you know, what happened 600 years ago, what Muhammad Fatih did then, what do you think why is this being made, why is such a big hoo-ha being made on the conversion of this museum back to a masjid today, when, in all honesty, someone could argue this is a Turkish issue, it's their property, this building is within Turkey, they can do whatever they want with it. You know, why is there such an uproar on this particular conversion of a museum to a building, to a mosque?
The obvious sort of reason is the West, the Christians within the West, the Greeks especially, they don't like this. They don't want the museum to be, or what they turned into a museum, to be converted back to a mosque. But one thing I'd like to add is, from a Sharia perspective, from a fiqh perspective, if there is a ruler, an Amir al-Mu'mineen of the Muslims, that potentially does a wrong action, there is a responsibility on the Ummah to correct that, whether that's 10 years, whether that's 600 years. Now, no doubt, that's not the case. It was a ghanima, it was a spoils for Sultan Muhammad Fatih, rahimullah. Okay? But the principle has to be understood. Because, sometimes the point can be made that, oh, so long ago, why do we need to worry about that now? Well, if we read Futu al-Buldan of Ahmad ibn Yahya, rahimullah, he actually mentions a historical report in there about Walid ibn Abdul Malik taking a mosque in Damascus, or taking a church in Damascus, just a part of a church, and building a mosque or musalla there. Now, 10 years later, approximately a decade later, you have the Christians coming to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz complaining, because remember, Damascus was taken by treaty by Khalid ibn al-Walid and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So what happens? When they go to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he raised the mosque. He raised the musalla 10 years later. He never said, oh, that was 10 years ago, get lost. Raised the musalla, he gave the land back to them. Why? Because that's just. And the rightly guided khulafa, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, they were just. In the current reality of what's going on, I think the atmosphere in Turkey, the mentality amongst a lot of the people there, the way there's a euphoria that's almost been building up there, and there's Erdogan manipulating or using neo-Ottomanism to consolidate his own position. I think it's created a certain temperature on the ground there, metaphorically speaking. And that temperature is generating a lot of heat for the surrounding sort of nations and continents in terms of what potentially can happen there. Let's take Erdogan out of the picture for one moment. If we just see, or if we just look at where the Turks were when the Islamic State was destroyed abolished in 1924, and where their mindset is now, there's a major difference. And I think one of the things that the Western nations, including America and Europe, one of the things that they're worried about is, if this snowball effect keeps continuing with the general masses, what is this going to lead to? I mean, even since the reconversion of the Masjid Hagia Sophia, there were articles within news websites like Yeni Safak saying, why isn't Erdogan actually putting forward a referendum of bringing back the Ottoman Caliphate? So I think the reason there's so much anxiety is due to the atmosphere on the ground and the gravitation of the Turks back to Islam, time and time again. And
okay.
That's
also,
my.
I know, I can't argue with that. I mean, also the fact that this particular building itself, it signifies a certain thing. It signifies, the spirit of jihad, the conquest. So this is something which, when Ataturk converted it to a museum, in a way, he was now, stamping the new secular nature of Turkey, and what this reconversion, or if you can call it that, to a masjid, what does it signify? Does it signify that the Muslims are coming more closer to the deen. I don't think anyone can argue with that fact. But anyway, bro, inshallah.
I think one quick point I like
very
to
quick
that,
point, brother. Very quick point.
Is the conversion itself is just a conversion. I think what it signifies is what's terrifying people, because it does serve as a kind of a measure of some of the thoughts and the emotions of the people on the ground.
Of course it does. You can't argue with that.
If just the conversion took place, assuming it took place under another secularist who was more sort of, iron-fisted, so what? It's a conversion. Good, but it's a conversion, yeah? But I think what it signifies is more terrifying than the actual conversion itself.
Yeah, of course.
If that makes sense.
Of course. No, of course. But inshallah, I think we're going to have to end it there.
One final point. Okay.
Go on, bro.
We need to be very, very careful about the way we address this, in light of the fact that Erdogan is still a secularist. So, in terms of his ruling system and stuff, yeah, there's expectation of things to change on the ground. But for the time being, if this man is maintaining his relationship with Israel as he has, and he's still ruling by a secular, non-Islamic constitution, we need to be vigilant about not appearing soft in regards to him.
I think, bro, to be honest with you, from my personal point of view, when all this issue of Hagia Sophia happened, I went there many years ago. I've been there a few times, and the same way when I went to Alhambra Palace in Granada, I felt a pain when I seen the building, and I remembered recalled the fact that history tells us that all the Muslims are driven out, and you see the ayats of the Quran. It's sad, it's sad. And when I used to go to Hagia Sophia, I always had a thought that inshallah ta'ala this is still a masjid. There should be a masjid. So the way I see it is, I'm disconnecting this issue of Hagia Sophia returning to a masjid from AK Party, from Erdogan as such. Okay, the action itself of changing this is a blessed action. This is something which every Muslim really should rejoice. This is something which it's very small victory, if in the grand scheme of things, but it's something which like I said, if you look at the timeline and you look at the attempts, the maneuvers that the West did to secularize Muslims, whoever's doing it, the point is this is something which is undoing that, undoubtedly. So that's the way I see it. Whatever Erdogan's intentions are, I don't know, but I'm not going to judge this particular situation based on what his motives were. I know that this does have a galvanizing impact on the ummah. You sense this on social media when you meet people, and alhamdulillah, people are saying today Hagia Sophia, tomorrow, kick out NATO, do away with the peace treaties with Israel, then Al-Aqsa, and then who knows from there. But anyway, I'm not going to give you an opportunity to say anything more because it's going to be difficult to stop you.
We've gone slightly over the 10 minutes we planned.
Well over. But many things, a couple of things I want to point out. First of all is Brother Mudassar is going to be posting his blog. I guess this is on your personal blog site, right?
Yeah.
So you'll share the link onto Facebook, and I'll also share the link as well. And I'll also be uploading this to YouTube. So if everyone can like and subscribe to the Path to Revival channel on YouTube, that would be amazing. And inshallah, we'll get this up. And like I said, on Facebook, obviously everyone can comment, agree, disagree, and we will be there to discuss further. Brother Mudassar, Jazakallah khair for taking time out on this rainy Sunday. It really means a lot. And inshallah ta'ala, I'll speak to you soon. And hopefully we can do this again.
Inshallah ta'ala.
Okay, bro. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.